ongoing skirmish in Iran, which results in the Strait of Hormuz being closed and oil prices skyrocket.
We said multiple times on this podcast that the snapback was going to be aggressive.
And then you have the safe driver week, brake safety week, all those things that continue to disrupt capacity.
And the thing is that there are quite a few tailwinds that have been put in place that should sort of fire up a demand surge.
Well, we follow all the rules, so we should be charging more.
Your problem is that your shipper closes at 2 and your receiver doesn't open until 9 p.m.
Calling all CPG shippers, truckers, and logistics pros. Welcome to the Truck Yeah Podcast, your ultimate cheat code for smarter shipping, smoother logistics, and dominating the shelf where it matters most. Buckle up. It's time to learn, laugh, and get your freight on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Zipline Logistics Podcast. My name is Jesse Jewett. Joined with me, as always, Teddy Lee Knox. Hello, Teddy.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful. We got a recurring guest, our third co-host, co-founder, Andrew Lynch. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for letting me come back, even though I'm always wrong.
Hey, that's all right. We're talking Q3. It sounds like you're having some...
You may not have been wrong.
Getting a little bit
Over a
burned.
long enough timeline.
Yeah.
Maybe you were just
You
talking
never
about
know.
a couple years from now.
I'm usually wrong early.
We got a lot of things right. We got a lot of things wrong. But that's okay, because we're talking Q3 2026 freight market perspective. So we're going to talk about things, what's happening now, what we saw in Q2, and what's coming up in quarter 3 2026. We ready?
We're ready. But before we jump into it,
Sure.
I just want to mention that one of the things we always talk about is controlling the controllables. And that is all you can do in logistics, and regardless of the market. So even though predictions may have been not accurate, that still is. So no matter what, if you can control the controllables, have a plan, have a backup plan, and have the right partnerships in place, everything will go the way it's supposed to.
Yeah,
So-
which we did call that out in Q2.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
I think I was mostly referring to I'm going to just chalk up the last, kind of since COVID, that we're still in a world where those of us who've been in this industry for over 20 years are seeing things that we've never seen before. And in this case, it's a supply-driven market flip that is just dramatically more impactful than any other supply-driven market change that we've ever seen. It's not even close. These are normally the very shallow dips in the cycles, and this one, obviously, it created a massive dip on the back of a huge demand surge, and now it's its sort of snapback is creating a wild climb. So the COVID ride continues.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of reset or level set on what's the last 9 months has happened here. All right, in the world of freight. So, end of October, the FMCSA, the current administration, really targeting non-domiciled CDL drivers, certainly non-domiciled, or I guess CDL schools as well. Some bad actors, right? You think back to your COVID comment, the demand was high, the entry was low, right? A lot of people think, hey, this is a great opportunity. I can buy a truck for relatively cheap. I can get a driver's license for relatively cheap, and I can start making some serious money as a truck driver. 5 years later, an administration comes in and says, we got to get these folks off the road. So that's kind of the first domino that falls. Next up, we have Black Friday, anticipating low numbers. And it turns out, hey, the economy and the consumer is still strong here in America. So we're driving demand, right, by buying goods for the holiday season. So we're seeing that kind of higher than anticipated, if I'm not mistaken. Then we roll into, January 2026. That's a typically slower time of year. The demand is still high as capacity continues to exit the market. Then we have 2 weather events in January. So that causes some more disruption. We're trying to read the tea leaves. I think this is when we had our Q2 update discussion. So trying to figure out if it's weather-driven or if it's demand-driven, supply-driven, etc. And all these things are still happening. Then mid-February, we have the tariff ruling. So another, change. That's going to cause imports. We're starting to see that now. They're starting to fluctuate in. They're starting to roll in, right? tariffs have been removed. The barrier of entry of importing is lower. So we're starting to see those show up at the ports, especially now.
I feel like fluctuate was a good word for that. I feel like that is
Great.
Exactly what's happening.
Nailing it. Give me the button. No. So then end of February, as things are starting to quote unquote, level out, we enter into this ongoing skirmish and in Iran, which results in the Strait of Hormuz being closed and oil prices skyrocket. So at a time when the demand is high and capacity is being removed off the road, now we have another element in there, which is diesel essentially doubling. It's not quite doubling, but it's pretty darn close. I mean, we were seeing reports in April and May of, even in California, like $8 a gallon for diesel, which is just insane. And that's kind of continued. So all of that has contributed to, I think, where we're at now today is, the oil is starting to come down here in the back half of Q2. So we're starting to see some relief on the diesel prices. But what hasn't changed is the capacity continues to be removed off of the road, and the demand is still relatively high. A lot of that is being driven by data centers and construction. The consumer is, I don't know. The prices are still high, and I think people are still buying stuff. Maybe they're putting it on credit card. That's probably a different podcast. But what's happening is there's not that, even though the prices are high, there's not a easy entry point, or there's not a designed entry point yet from the trucking perspective. So we don't have, thousands of folks coming here from other places to get a shot at a new life and a new opportunity for cheap, right? So there's no one entering in as truck drivers. And then the cost to actually buy a truck is up. So what the carriers are doing, normally you would say, all right, prices have doubled. Let's go get some trucks. Let's go get some drivers and start really making some bank. Well, unfortunately, since mid-2022, up until that time period I gave back like in November of 2025, rates were compressed. So carriers, motor carriers, trucking companies were operating at either really close to break even, thin margins, maybe even at a little loss. So right now, instead of going out and trying to capitalize on this significant demand, they're just trying to fill everything up. Let's get back to profitability. Let's be more strategic about this. Let's just hold the line and enjoy the profits while we can, because it right now, and we're going to talk about this, it doesn't look like it's going away.
No.
But man, they've been just so kicked in the teeth for the last 3 years that they're trying to be, the COVID was the wild, wild west. This is like, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution. That doesn't make any sense, but I think what it's going to be longer.
Yeah, it is. What I'll say that we did not get wrong again, or maybe we were wrong early, but one thing that we've been, I think pretty clear on is that, when it was time for these guys to start actually making hay, that they were not going to have any other option, right? Like when you're running a business that runs as thin, even in healthy markets as a trucking company does, or a freight brokerage, you've got a responsibility to your people or to your family or to whomever it is that you serve in this life to capitalize. And with how prolonged this downturn was, I know that we said multiple times on this podcast that the snapback was going to be aggressive and relatively ruthless, and it should be. I mean, that is exactly how this should go. If this is how this industry is going to comport itself, then you should expect its operators to behave in exactly that way. And as we get more firm on how the supply side of this equation is gonna play out, meaning, all of the things that you just said, also the fact that, there's not really terra firma from a regulatory perspective. No one really knows kind of what to expect over the next few years. Which means that there's not a lot of security in, making big investments in growing your fleet or growing your driver population, to the fact that capital is expensive and insurance is expensive and everything is really volatile. So we're, I don't think we're going to see a massive supply expansion, but what we still haven't seen, and why this snapback has shocked a lot of us in its sort of just kind of the steepness of the curve, is that we still haven't seen a big demand shift. There isn't a massive demand surge happening, and the thing is that there are quite a few tailwinds that have been put in place that should sort of fire up a demand surge.
Yeah.
To your point on sort of the tariff roller coaster, and but also just all of the work that has to be done on housing, which is the most impactful sector on freight that has been stagnated for the last several years, and is a top priority for this administration and the next to get sort of sorted out. So I think there's actually a really big risk that we see, certainly not in the next 2 quarters, just because there's nothing that urgent right now, but that we start to see a really, really, really steep demand curve over the next kind of year and a half, which could make things really dramatic.
Let's bookmark this so we can listen to it pending our Q4 update.
I use the word
it's definitely not in the next 2 quarters. Oh God,
we're gonna edit the word certainty out of that sentence.
That was that's a great call, because I forgot one piece, and it's on our topic: the Supreme Court ruling around liability for 3PLs. Right, so that's another, similar to fuel, that's another cost impact that's kind of outside of the supply and demand, window realm, if you will. That's just adding more fuel to this fire. Is that now 3PLs typically, and Andrew can speak on this better than I can, but typically there was some guardianship. I don't know. What's the word? Safety from 3PL's perspective.
Yeah.
That's the wrong word, but I think you understand what I'm protection. And now a shipper, someone who's involved in an accident can sue the 3PL for liability on that, not just the carrier. So that's going to increase insurance costs. There's all sorts of additional factors at play that we're still trying to figure out, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, if your insurance cost goes up, then your cost per mile goes up, then your cost per load goes up. Like, all of it plays into those factors. So that's just being passed on to the shipper.
Yeah, I mean,
rightfully so,
for sure. And a lot of interesting, questions come to mind around sort of how the industry reshapes following that ruling. But I know that on the last podcast we touched a little bit on like the days of the CSA scores, and what I think is going to be a critical sort of point of differentiation over the next few years is that, look, you can't have a detailed, strict carrier procurement program focused on safety that you don't follow, or you are just like begging to be sued, right? So that was always, all of our attorneys during all of that CSA stuff, all the counsel we got was like, look, whatever your program is, you can't overstate it to the market what it is. And also, whatever it is, you have to follow it. And so there's opportunity there, right, to, like, for us, right, where we have always differentiated on carrier selection, to go out to the market and talk about it and say, hey, look, this business actually was built on moving high touch, high vis, high value stuff. That's what we do, and it's what we've always done. And so our carrier selection process has always looked like this, and we've always followed it. The reason that we've always been, even when we were those CSA years, we were like a 12-person business. You were brand new.
Yeah.
Both of you were brand spanking new at Zipline. And the reason we became so dogged about documenting our safety guidelines, and then, really making sure that our guidelines were followable and repeatable and essentially became, kind of an automated part of the progress, was that our attorneys that was like their only emphasis was like, just whatever it is that you're saying you're doing, you better be doing it. And if you're not going to do it, don't go sell that service. Like, you're worse off. And so, we're really built from a procurement perspective for sort of this time. But I think it'll be interesting to see how less niche players have to talk about this. Like, I want to hear how some of like the huge, companies that sort of serve everyone.
Yeah.
How are they going to talk about their compliance programs, right? I mean, there's a new point. There's going to be a very new level of cost behind sort of, having a safety program in the name of marketing instead of in the name of safety and quality.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, certainly, like we said, that ruling is putting a lot of pressure on that, working with the best of the best. And those best of the best carriers know that, I mean, we've already seen it, right? They're capitalizing on the demand. Now they're capitalizing on, well, we follow all the rules, so we should be charging more.
Absolutely.
Are you ready to do that?
And they should.
Right. 100%.
It's an interesting position to be in. It's I need to understand more sort of how the mindset works of like the federal establishment to say, hey, we're actually not going to give you really any good safety data. We can't inspect all these carriers. There's far too many of them.
Yeah.
We have no way to do this. However, you are very much responsible for knowing the
right.
the safety. And again, like that was something that was ingrained here, but we have an industry that's, nearly $1 trillion with hundreds of thousands of operators in it. And I'd like to understand how those folks are going to process this interesting demand.
Yeah, there was a discussion at a symposium, a carrier meeting. I forget which one, but I know someone from the FMCSA came in and talked. And yeah, the challenge, I think it's like 94% don't have a safety rating.
Yeah,
which is maybe that's motor carriers numbers or whatever, but. And then that was part of the ruling, like if they have to be satisfactory, and if they don't, so it's like, okay, well then that's 6%. Like, what?
Yeah, shut the entire economy down.
What's happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably a different podcast that we could dive in. Let's talk about some other things that are happening in Q3. I'm just going to list these off, and we can talk about them as you see fit. But we're going to move relatively quickly here. Hurricane season's coming up here. That starts in early July.
I thought it started in June.
Well, I haven't heard any.
It's ramping up.
Yeah, it's ramping up. We're getting ready. Summertime in the Caribbean. Produce season, that's certainly happening now. We expect that to continue through July. That's the early part of Q3, but then we'll see it in other spots of the world. We've got beverage season happening. Hot beverages, cold beverages, most likely cold. Man, oh man. Side note, we're recording this right around the July 4th holiday. It is unbelievable at the grocery stores. I mean, I saw it was like pallets and pallets of just beverages, just non-alcoholic and alcoholic, just ready to go. Like, here's everything you could possibly need for your party or your take on the heat wave that we're experiencing. Some Blitz week. So we got Operation Safe Driver Week. That's happening in July. We've got Brake Safety Week in August. So again, these are not supply and demand factors. These are just other things that pop up that can affect capacity or the market in very, very unique ways, right? So obviously, if there's hurricanes happening in the southeast, then people are going to avoid going there. So now you have to pay them to go somewhere else, or you have to pay them extra to go down into those problem areas. Maybe you have to pay them less to get out. So there's all sorts of factors to kind of consider. Any other comments there, Teddy, that you want to throw at some of these?
With everything that we were talking about, I feel like I keep thinking about the fact that supply and demand, everything, but at what point does it start changing based off of available capacity? Like if capacity continues to exit the marketplace, if we only have 6% of carriers that have a safety rating that we can use, at what point does it become something where it's like, well, this is a summer beverage, so this only comes out in the summer. This is a winter beverage. We're only going to do this in the winter, because beverages right now, they're meal replacements. They have protein, they have collagen, they have energy, it's sparkling, it's everything all in one.
Yeah.
Which I think also it becomes difficult when you go into produce season or when you go into the winter, because they need to protect from freeze. You don't want them exploding. So all of a sudden, something where it's just used to be a simple beverage has to change everything as far as, how it's stored, to how it's shipped, to how it's received and sent to the actual stores. All of that changes seasonally. So something that normally goes dry, all of a sudden has to go refrigerated because cars are melting outside right now. So I think all of that is really interesting. And then you have the safe driver week, brake safety week, all those things that continue to disrupt capacity and what's going on.
Take it off the road, yeah.
Yeah. So like all of that, I think becomes really interesting, and that changes the pain points that people are dealing with and that understand, because I mean, I don't really think the logistics industry is something that people really understand quickly or understand what's going on. There's always so many changes. So if you are a shipper and you're only dealing with the marketing side and the retailers and things like that, every time something like this pops up where it's like, safety week is good, why are we upset about this?
Well, I would imagine, so yeah, that's a really good call out, but like the pain point, right? So I was trying to think of a way, and Andrew could probably talk about this, of rate stability. Whew, man, that should be a blog post. But in this market, right, I think what we deal with is that, a rate, whether it's an all-in rate or a cost per mile, I mean, it's honestly, if it's certainly weekly, daily, maybe hourly, right? Like when you're talking about a particular order, it can change that quickly, right? And so the pain point with some of our shippers that we talk to, I know we've talked about it before, but like a lane, right, for a carrier, I think the original or one metric was like, you got to have one of those a day, right? A business day. So 250 a year to like have a lane, right? So a lot of our customers do not have that density. Nice. And so we're sourcing, now we have carrier partners, et cetera, but a lot of it's on the spot market. So as the spot rates continue to rise, and fuel continues to be volatile, like again, it shifts, all of these things shift, certainly with the capacity, but as I mentioned before, so that's a pain point that we're having to explain almost daily. Of like, I know I told you it was $12.50 Monday, but it's Tuesday now, it's $14.50. Or maybe Wednesday it'll be $11.50. Like, that's exciting. So how do you balance that all out with a customer is a challenge.
It's like kind of the tale's old time in this business too, right? Because, price transparency, like when I started, brokering, in carrier sales at Robinson, it was like, we had an asymmetric advantage, which was, data and market information, right? You could be speaking with a carrier and say, look, there are 700 trucks in this metro area and there's 7 loads and I have one of them. This is what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. Or the other way around. And that was how the industry ran. And as technology, obviously in a million positive ways has become ubiquitous, so has price transparency. Like the commodity of and I don't like to refer to it as a commodity because it's not. It's a stratified commodity though, right? In that, at a certain kind of price band, or in a certain lane, you're going to essentially pay, within a 3 or 4%, kind of delta of a specific rate. What shippers and customers and our job as professional, sort of managed transportation providers is to educate our clients that part of the equation is basically uncontrollable. So we can have our network, our relationships, they have their own businesses to run. They can have established pricing with us, but if your freight does not fit their timeline, which is less flexible, then we have to go to the spot market or we have to go to the next person in line and their cost is going to be a little bit higher. But what you can control, back to Teddy's, kind of very consistent point of controlling the controllables, is making the freight work for the truck. Like if price is your North Star as a consumer packaged goods manufacturer, then you need to understand that in order to achieve price, you've got to find flexibility elsewhere. And we've talked about this, like the cost of perfection in your supply chain. We've had this over the years, so many white papers and case studies on this, where it's like, look, you can control the price. It means that other parts of your business have got to become flexible. And if you're a shipper that has, hours from, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and your receivers are CNS and UNFI locations that receive from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., guess what? Like, you do not have this. And so you either better go start paying your people overtime at the shipping location so that they can ship at hours that make it efficient for carriers, or start figuring out how to justify these costs in your price point. But at the end of the day, the reason that they can be called commodities to some extent is that they are experienced industry-wide. So the thing that's important for shippers to understand is that, look, if you make a sparkling protein beverage right now and you're seeing your transportation costs go up, your competitors' transportation costs are going up too. Pepsi's transportation costs are going up. Coke's transportation. So don't worry so much about that part of your bottom line. Worry about the return that you're getting, because the difference between you and your competitor isn't whether or not you paid 4 cents a mile less on that lane. It's whether or not your product was on the shelf when your customer was there to buy it. That's the difference between winning and losing in your space. And that's where you should be focusing your energy.
I agree with that. And I think something that is always overlooked, I feel like I see it all the time, is cadence tracking and order minimums. There are so many times where I see we are shipping 2 cases somewhere where it's like, why does this need to be on a pallet?
Yeah.
So I think that all goes back to controlling the controllables, but also having the right partnerships. If you can't have that partnership and that discussion with your buyer, with your customers, that's going to increase your cost too. And if you don't know what your main cost is it cost per pallet, cost per lane, cost per piece, unit? Like all of those things become really important to your point of the North Star. What is it? It can't just be cost. It should be cost of something. And then also makes the importance of growing within each retailer successfully. So don't just say, I'm going to do all 10 of these retailers at once. Do one, grow in there, get them to a good point, and then move on to the next. Because if you have 15 little ones that aren't following their minimums, it's going to be really, really hard to control any of that and make a plan to keep up with that North Star.
Well, and think about, I'm pretty sure I've referenced this every podcast in the last 12 months, but the tenure of the person in the seat making the decision right now has never seen this. And they probably, because any clown with a phone could get freight moved on time, for the last 4 years, because there was so much capacity out there that, more than likely they've got a network of order takers. And no one's telling them, hey, dude, your problem is not that, Eastern Pennsylvania is flush with freight. Your problem is that your shipper closes at 2 and your receiver doesn't open until 9 p.m. And that's your problem. And you're fixing the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, but it's one that we developed a system, Andrew. How about that? Or a tool, and that would be called KANOPI.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg type scenario, but because we developed that tool, we can help identify those trends, right? So Teddy was just talking about some KPIs. To me, I think that's important. I'm reflecting on a current monthly review that we have with a current customer where we have trends from the last 3 years and we can actually show them. And because of that flexibility that you just referenced, our trends aren't as quote unquote bad as the market says it is, because we've developed carriers that run those lanes, because we've developed a good rapport with the shipper, because we've identified that we can park overnight or there is a second shift, or all of these things that we do for our customers almost on a daily basis. So what else do you think in terms of Zipline in this marketplace? I think you alluded to it already with transparency, but anything else from your founding, was it 19 years ago?
Yeah.
That are still holding true today?
20. It's just like every other business I touch. It's about value sets. And when you are serving us, the reason we chose to serve a specific niche wasn't because we were, brilliant or prescient or anything else. It was that we understood that we needed to pick a value set that we were going to run our business on. It made it easy for us as dumb founders that were young and just didn't really, understand how to build anything else. But it really still is the way that we run this business. It's the way we find our fill our pipeline with people that we know are going to fit our value set. The people that come across that convert into new clients are almost always, especially in markets like this, people that actually meet our value set. And so for our clients or for our competitors, it's understand what value are you delivering at the end of the day to your buyer, and then run every single other aspect of your business through that lens. And look, for every single client we have, at the end of the day, your product moves off of shelf fulfillment and on-time fulfillment. So that's the only thing you need to care about. And good, transparent partners can help you plan better, can help you understand what your network looks like. I mean, you and Teddy and the work that our team does with clients and helping them identify those opportunities that they have to save money or improve the value proposition, the money that they're spending, is super impactful. And we see it in the success of our clients, right? They come in here and they grow. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
All right, we're going to brass tacks. Give me your 2-minute prediction for Q3. Is it going to shift? Is it going to go down?
No,
what do you think?
I think this continues. There's no reason why it wouldn't, especially not this quarter. I think, there's probably some level of truth to the market that'll come out in the fourth quarter, right? When things typically start to soften up a little bit, late fourth quarter. But I just don't see any reason why it would slow. Now, I'm pretty sure I said I don't see any reason why it would pick up any more than it did in the second quarter. So, what the hell do I know? But we haven't seen a really big shift in demand dynamics, and we're in a seasonal high demand time of year right now and part of the cycle. So it is natural for demand to be up against, I think that supply trends move in much longer terms than demand trends do.
Sure.
At least in the post-COVID world. So I don't see demand trends shifting a ton outside of seasonality. So I'd love to say it's going to quiet down a little bit in the back half of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's going to run hot. It's running hot. It's going to stay hot, and that's okay.
And look, if interest rates change,
sure,
all bets are off, and it's just back to start over.
There's going to be some relief in the fuel. Hopefully, it's interesting to see how small of a percentage of that relief is. Right?
That's never really been the driver. We've always, I feel like it's one of those things that people are told to look at as a driver, but in real terms, look, you go back to the stat of 96% of fleets are less than 5 trucks. Those guys don't know what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. They don't know what the weekly DOE was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
They don't know that stuff. They don't care. They care, what does it cost me to run my truck from here to there? And how much money can I make on that against that cost?
It'll be interesting. We'll see you again here in a few months to talk about Q4. Andrew, as always, leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. If you've learned something new, you're going to check out our quarterly update by clicking on the link in the show notes for our blog. Andrew Lynch, founder of Zipline, thank you for joining us as always. We will see you next time.